happy summer solstice, and it's so beautiful outside, so I appreciate you being here. And thank you to everyone on Zoom as well. So the Regenerative Landscaping Speaker Series is a special series we've put together to help people kind of shift through that perspective change of going against like the chemical, toxic, industrial treatment of land and moving into one of regeneration and building soil health and biodiversity and water holding capacity, all these amazing things when we partner with nature. So in my intros for these talks, I want to try to weave together a bit of a story about the planet and how the systems can work together to create this amazing regenerative planet. I mean, honestly, we've done industrial actions on the land for so long, we don't even really know what this planet is capable of. At least back in the day, we had grass that was this high. That's very rare anymore. I think there's only 4% of grasslands left in North America right now. So we have a lot of work to do to regenerate. And our first talk was with Katrina Blair. That was on May 1st. She's of Turtle Lake Refuge and Be Happy Lands. And if you want to check out that talk, it is archived on projectdungbeetle.org. And then a quick projectdungbeetle.org. Yes, and so you can go to the Regenerative Landscaping tab, and it's at the bottom, archived there. And then I wanted to talk about what's happening from a plant's perspective. So that's kind of how I started that first talk. And thinking about ourselves in community and how that connects with how plants are in community with soil and soil health and microorganisms. So if we think about what we're doing with toxic chemical sprays, when we spray all of these dicamba and 2,4-D and glyphosate, Roundup, and what that's doing is killing the soil microbiome. And so it's leaving, you're a plant, you've got your other plant friends, but you don't have your soil microbiome around you. You don't have all of those relationships and connection that really help you be healthy and thrive because it's a co-evolved relationship. So you have all the soil microorganisms that are related to you and vice versa. And you don't have that when we're killing the soil microbiome with industrial practices like spraying toxic chemicals. And then we put these plants on synthetic fertilizers, so NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And yeah, you can survive on that, but you don't thrive. You don't have your community. So it's something for us to kind of shift out of our human-centric perspective and go into what we're really doing to these plants. And furthermore, we've actually, degraded, like when you think about regenerative ag versus sustainable, we have degraded our landscape so much that when you look at like a graph, it's going down because we've degenerated so much to the point where we're losing 75 billion tons of topsoil per year, mostly from faulty agricultural practices off of our lands through erosion and floods and all these kinds of things. So when you look at sustainable, we don't really want to sustain that. That is sustaining something that has degenerated. So how do we regenerate? And that's really what this is all about. And there's so many regenerative practices we can do, and that's what we're going to be touching on today. So let's see. Oh, and I want to say, it's not our fault that we are at this place. Back in the day, generations past, they made decisions based on thought processes that they thought were good and helpful. But as time has gone on, we've seen that that is not the case. And now we have a lot of work to do to regenerate. And it's really going to take how we think as opposed to really anything else, because everything else is a tool. How do we utilize and manage the land, which is how we're thinking. That's what determines that. So for this talk, I just wanted to do a quick thing about water and kind of a snapshot of one of my favorite microorganisms in the soil, mycorrhizal fungi. And they are it's a fungus that has a symbiotic relationship with the root systems of plants. And this is a co-evolved relationship over 400 million years or more. And they attach to the root systems, and they have this whole relationship where they are not only giving nutrients to the plant, but they are also getting things from the plant too. And through this, they secrete a substance called glomalin, which is a glue-like substance. It was only discovered in 1996, so this is very new. And what that does is it creates soil aggregates. So it's kind of like a glue, and it holds the soil together, which creates soil porosity, which allows nutrient transfer, water holding capacity, life in the soil. And so the thing that kind of always gets me when I try and wrap my head around this is for every 1% of soil organic matter that we create on an acre of land, which we can do through various regenerative practices, that acre of land can hold an extra 20,000 gallons of water. And there are farmers and ranchers out there creating like 5+% soil organic matter in no time, like 5, 7, 10 years, maybe even less. And what that does is, okay, now we have 100,000 gallons of water for 5% of soil organic matter. We're in the drought-stricken West. That's a big deal. So that helps us deal with wildfires and floods and drought and erosion. And this also helps, when you have more roots in the ground, you have more water transpiration, which helps seed local rainfall, which helps to balance the whole system. So I'm super grateful to our sponsors. We have them listed here. We have James Ranch, which we are at tonight, a regenerative ranch. They move ruminant animals through holistic planned grazing. So they're actually mimicking the way that nature would move animals through predator pressure, and they're doing that with electric fencing. And so they move them across the land. They're never in the same spot, but they are always together. And that is one of the actions that creates increased soil health. We have WeFill, which is plastic free. She sources really well. She's up on North Main, and so if you need to refill any soaps or anything like that, you can check out WeFill. We have Gleason Bison. She regeneratively ranches, I think she's at 85 bison now on 900 acres out in Hesperus, and the land is just beautiful, and she's doing amazing work. She sent me a video last night. She flipped over a cow pie, and there were tons of dung beetles. I was so excited. I was like, yes! And then we have Durango Outdoor Exchange. Absolutely love them. They are used gear and clothing. These pants, Durango Outdoor Exchange, they're awesome. And then we have all of our speakers. So this is our, through our speaker series. So we are through September. So definitely stay tuned. Our next talk is going to be Thursday, July 20th at the library. It's going to be Table to Farm Compost, and that's going to be at 6 p.m. So I would like to introduce Brooke, our speaker for the evening. She's the owner of Blooming Landscape and Design. Read an awesome bio about her here. Brooke has a diverse background in water quality, natural resource planning, and landscape architecture. She has a BA in environmental studies and a master's in landscape architecture. She is also certified in permaculture design. Brooke has a passion for sustainability and conservation. Her work over the past 20 years has reflected that passion. Her graduate thesis focused on the viability of green roofs in arid areas and their role in stormwater pollution prevention. She is very interested in the melding of design with ecological restoration. This weaving of restoration with design has been the main focus throughout her career. Her thoughtful designs attempt to restore biodiversity and bring resilience back into the landscape. She is an advocate of using native plants when possible and a proponent of capturing and using rainwater on site. She wants to pioneer a new form of landscaping that moves away from ornamental landscapes dominated by lawns and exotic plants and into more holistic, beautiful, and functional landscapes that are enjoyed by all of Earth's inhabitants. So here we are, Brooke.
Thanks so much for being here. It's such a beautiful evening, and you've chosen to come here. Thank you. And I was just going to say that Mandy pretty much just gave my whole speech, so she summed it up. No, there's more stuff, but And I wanted to just also give a shout out to Mandy before I start on this presentation, because she's been working so hard in the community to educate folks on different land management practices, and I was really excited to meet Mandy and kind of partner with her because I'm trying to do the same with my business. So it's just exciting to have somebody like that that's so passionate and is out there doing a lot of legwork and in the trenches. So thank you. She's got so much energy. So I wanted to start off with some photos of some landscapes that we typically see, and just so you can kind of get a sense of, what's out there. So we've got these different, which ones kind of appeal to you. Obviously, these are very different from those first two. And then, do you guys know where this is? Anybody have any idea? That is on the High Line Trail in New York City. Yep. That's an old rail line that was converted into a linear park. It's amazing. And then we have this. So I will say for myself that I am more drawn to landscapes that are more dynamic, that have more life, that mimic nature, than a lawn, a manicured lawn that lacks biodiversity. And I think when we're talking about regenerative landscapes, this type of landscape lends itself more to biodiversity, to healthy soils and healthy ecosystem. And this is the Lurie Garden in Chicago, which is amazing. And here on the left, this is the Rocky Mountain Permaculture Center in Basalt, Colorado. Okay, so how many acres of land in the US are aesthetically managed? You guys guess?
D.
Close. So it's about 75 million to 100 million acres are aesthetically managed. And so when we say aesthetically managed, we're talking about manicured, kind of very cultivated landscapes, right? And so, and a lot of these landscapes, and as you can see, and I apologize for that photo, I don't know why it's not fuzzy on mine. But as you can see, these landscapes do not really have any kind of connectivity, right, to the surrounding ecosystem. They're very disconnected. There's a lawn I see is essentially a monocrop, and you have maybe a few plants. So they're just disconnected, they're uninformed of localized and regional ecology, and not a landscape that I particularly love. So Mandy spoke to sustainability versus regenerative practices, and I agree wholeheartedly with her. Maybe what, not a century ago, I'm sorry, like a decade ago, sustainable was the buzzword, right? It was all about sustainability, but we need to move beyond sustainability because, as Mandy mentioned, most of our landscapes have been degenerated. So how can we, as stewards of the land, and I look at gardeners because I'm a landscape contractor, we are stewards of the land. And so we can collectively and individually make a difference, and we can create beautiful landscapes and help regenerate the ecology in our own yards. So that's why I love regenerative. I love the term. I love just what it represents. It's wonderful to be able to improve something, make it even better. So why do we need regenerative landscapes and systems? So as you can see, this photo here is very revealing. We have a guy who's standing in a prairie grassland, and right next to it we have a farm that's been obviously tilled over and over again, where they've lost a lot of that topsoil. So, and Mandy had said, you said 70 billion. 75 billion. Or 75 billion tons of topsoil. Well, was that per year? Oh wow, it's astounding how much topsoil we're losing just because of the farming practices that we have. But as you know, I mean, during the Dust Bowl, right, in the 1930s, that was caused by humans because of that excessive tilling and just, exposure of the soil not having any roots, and it's eroding and causing all of these problems. So we're losing a ton of topsoil, as you can see here. I mean, obviously, topsoil is important for our food. And then also, topsoil is extremely important for sequestering carbon. And I'll go into that a little bit more. So I love this quote: "Humankind, despite its artistic abilities, sophistication, and accomplishments, owes its existence to a six-inch layer of farmable soil and the fact that it rains." So yeah, we've sent people to the moon, and we've invented the iPhone, we've done all these amazing things, but we would not have been able to do those without that 6-inch layer of soil and the fact that it rains. So how amazing is that? I mean, it's humbling when you think about how important soil is to our health and the health of the planet. So this is just a frame of reference, and I love to pull this in because our soil horizon and what we're dependent on is so minute compared to the rest of the earth. And so this just gives a great perspective on just how important that 6-inch layer of soil is. And so really, in terms of the soil horizons, the organic layer, the humus, and the topsoil, and the alluviation layer are really the three that we rely on so heavily in terms of just the nutrients and the life-sustaining force. Okay, so we have come up with some principles for regenerative landscaping, and here we're on this ranch, and you guys do a lot of regenerative agriculture, and this is kind of a spin-off of regenerative agriculture. So how can we take regenerative practices and bring them into our landscaping practices. And so all of these here, we believe, are regenerative in nature, even reducing waste. So our first one, obviously, is rebuild and safeguard soil health. We believe that is probably the most important one. Increasing biodiversity, conserving water, conserve energy and reduce CO2 emissions, using native perennial plants, creating habitat, buying and sourcing products locally, and reducing waste. But before I go into those principles, I just wanted to throw out some factoids, and Mandy already kind of threw out some of them. But so did you know that the top 3 feet of soil contains more carbon than the atmosphere, plants, trees, and animals combined, and it can hold much more? It's astounding. And Mandy had spoken to how if you increase the organic matter, that increases the water holding capacity. It's amazing just having more organic matter in the soil and how that helps the soil retain more water. And then increasing organic matter by 1% in the top 12 inches of soil in a normal sized backyard can remove 1 ton or more of CO2 from the atmosphere. I mean, that's amazing. So we can all help reverse climate change. How cool is that? There can be more organisms in a teaspoon of healthy soil than there are people living on Earth. And then Mandy spoke to glomalin, which is just amazing. It's an amazing discovery in terms of soil health and the aggregates. If you dig into like a really healthy clump of soil with nice roots in there and you see these aggregates, these clumps of soil, it's the glomalin that's kind of holding that together. So I just love this image because it's just amazing to me to think how much life is in just 1 teaspoon of soil. Even several miles of fungal hyphae. It's just, yeah, it's astounding. So how does soil store carbon? And this is a very simplified illustration of how it happens. But I mean, obviously we know photosynthesis happens. The plants need CO2, right, for their energy and their food, and then they convert that and it comes down through their plant stem and through their roots, and then the soil organisms feed on that. And so what happens is the carbon gets stored in the soil when those soil organisms are either feeding on it or you have dead matter that's just there. And then also the glomalin plays a big role in keeping carbon stored, as long as it's not being disturbed, through tilling. Then that glomalin stores a lot of that. And then of course there is some CO2 that is released through respiration. Okay, so the rebuilding and safeguarding soil health is so important. So as a landscape business, what we do primarily in terms of fertilizing is just using organic compost and compost tea. Those are the main things. We sometimes, when we're planting stuff, installing plants, we'll use a little bit of yum yum mix or something. But overall, that's all we do. We just do organic compost and we do compost tea. We do brew our own compost tea. And so this helps all of those microorganisms that Mandy was talking about that are so, so vital to plant health. If you don't have those microorganisms there, then you don't have healthy plants. And then you are dependent on synthetics, which is what a lot of these companies want. So, so this is us spraying, and I know it looks like we're spraying pesticides, but we're not. We were going to try and just get a little artistic with those so that, I don't know, it says compost tea or something. But yeah, so, and then this is our, I don't know if this is going to play or not, maybe it will. Yeah, so we're just showing our, brewing our compost tea, and so we brew it for about 24 to 36 hours. Yes, it's with a pump, and so it's essentially, it's almost like making a kombucha for the soil. It's like a probiotic for the soil. It's amazing. And so it's just the microorganisms just love it, So it's just, I don't know if you guys like kombucha. I love kombucha, so I like to use that reference as the kombucha. Oops. So I just included this because I just want to reiterate how important that organic matter is. And so I'm just going to read this quickly. Organic matter is a key component of soil that affects its physical, chemical, and biological properties, contributing greatly to its proper functioning on which human societies depend. Benefits of soil organic matter, SOM, include improvement of soil quality through increased retention of water and nutrients, resulting in greater productivity of plants and natural environments in agriculture settings. SOM improves soil structure and reduces erosion, leading to improved water quality in groundwater and surface waters, and ultimately to increased food security and decreased negative impacts to ecosystems. So it's just amazing what we do if we just retain the organic soil matter. It's like, okay, that's all we have to do, you know, and we make it so hard for ourselves. We've just made it so difficult. So obviously this is a perfect kind of segue after, you know, just talking about the importance of the organic matter and how these chemicals, regardless if it's just saying it's targeting one species, it's not, because any species that comes in contact with these chemicals is either going to be harmed or it's going to be killed. So that could be birds, it could be pollinators, and these definitely kill the soil organisms. So it's just, it's so broad in terms of what it harms that we don't recommend them. So as a company, we have completely gone chemical free. We've taken a chemical free pledge, so we don't use any pesticides or herbicides. So if we have clients that ask for them, that's an opportunity for us to educate them. So we've done our job if we are just in front of people who don't know about this, and we can educate them a little bit about using these chemicals. So another way to kind of safeguard your soil, obviously, is covering it with either a cover crop or some kind of mulch. And the cover crops are great because if you do have, I mean, obviously in our yards, right, they're not huge, but if you have a bare patch of, you know, that just ground that doesn't have anything growing in it, why not throw a cover crop on it? So why not some clover? Or clover is great because it's a nitrogen fixer. But if you don't want to do that, you could just throw mulch on it. I mean, just to reduce soil erosion and to reduce soil evaporation. So, and then even just leaf mulch and grass clippings. And I know I'm kind of going against, I'm not your average landscaper, so I'm probably decreasing the amount of work because I'm telling people, yeah, just put your leaves, you know, like, I mean, of course we rake up leaves on lawns. Because it can actually harm the lawn, you know, start to create fungus and stuff. But a lot of times we'll take those leaves and we'll just put them around trees or, you know, just as a mulch. I mean, because leaves are great. They're a great mulch. So anyway, so this is, you know, these are benefits of cover crops, as you can see, and a lot of pollinators benefit from them. And it sequesters carbon because you have roots in the soil. So one thing that I've noticed in nature is that how many people have actually noticed bare soil that wasn't disturbed by humans out in nature? Have you ever seen, aside from maybe the desert or something, but I'm saying with nothing on it? I don't think I can think of a place in nature where there's just bare soil. So bare soil happens when we come in and we disturb it. Or it gets disturbed by some kind of animal or whatever, but usually you don't see that. So having some kind of roots or having, there's always duff. There's something on top of the soil. It doesn't even have to be roots per se, but there's always something on the soil. You know what I'm saying? There's leaves or there's duff or there's something that's covering. Yeah, pine needles, yeah. So another way to safeguard soil health, obviously, is to minimize soil disturbance and tillage. And we're discovering this now in terms of just how detrimental tilling can be to soil health and to the environment. So when we're tilling and when we're excessively tilling, we are not only are releasing all that stored carbon that's in the soil, but then we're damaging and harming the microorganisms. We're harming the mycorrhizal fungi. I mean, all of these things that live in there. So it's impossible not to do a little bit of, and you know, it's even us, like we have just times where we have to do some tilling. It's just, sometimes you just have to do it, but if you can do it in a way that's not super excessive, there are certain things that you can do, like if you're really into gardening, a broad fork is a great tool to have, which kind of helps loosen up the soil, but it's not like the rototiller effect. That's really destructive. So a broad fork is great for that. And then I know that there's a machine, what's the machine called that inserts the seeds, that it doesn't, it's a drill, yeah, like a seed drill. So I know some ranchers and farmers are adopting that method of sowing crops now. Instead of tilling, they're doing this. They have this machinery that just puts the seeds in the soil. It's pretty amazing. So anyway, so healthy soil results in obviously carbon sequestration, improved water infiltration and retention, obviously increased concentration of microorganisms, which then helps the plants, reduced need for inputs, which saves you money. So just keeping the soil healthy, you're going to save money, and you're going to have healthier plants, and you're going to have less maintenance, and you'll have less weeds. It's like, okay. Improved soil structure and aggregation, improved health and resilience of plants. And then also, I mean, they've done a lot of research on this, like edible plants, plants that are grown conventionally versus organically or regeneratively. The ones that are grown or regeneratively and organically are highly more nutritious than the ones that are not. So increasing biodiversity and densifying planting. So this is a project that we did where we just transformed this woman's little grass strip into a pollinator garden, kind of flower garden. And so we put in about 20 different types of plants, and about 50% of them are native, because we're really trying to do more natives. And then we didn't put any weed barrier down, because we want it to self-seed and to just propagate and to fill in the spaces. And then when you have those kind of more dense plantings, you have less weeds, which is awesome. So there's less maintenance. And it looks amazing. That was right after we did it, and it's filled in. It looks amazing now. Obviously, installing a drip irrigation system. I mean, we live in the Southwest, and I know this year was amazing in terms of the amount of water, but we can't, rely on that. So I mean, just doing that, installing a drip system is like can save a ton of water in terms of just, your landscape. And then conserving water again in terms of creating basins or swales or contouring the land in a way that you're capturing the rainwater and not directing it to, the storm drains. So we typically, if we are doing any work on somebody's home that has a gutter, we'll try to capture that water and bring it back into the landscape. And it's nice, and they're nice little design elements too, so they look nice and they're functional. And then this is a great illustration. Do you guys know Brad Lancaster? Do any of you know Brad Lancaster? Oh, he's amazing. He's an amazing TED Talk on YouTube. Just type in Brad Lancaster. He lives in Tucson, and he has started this whole rainwater harvesting course that you can take, but it's about harvesting rainwater. And this illustration just shows the ways in which you can harvest rainwater, either from the roof, or you can harvest it by creating basins and swales in your landscape. So it's amazing, and the things that they've done in Tucson. And he also convinced the city of Tucson to create curb cuts so the water is directed into these medians and not to the storm drain. It's amazing. So I highly recommend seeing that. So obviously another way to conserve water is just, watering earlier or later in the evening to reduce evaporation. And then also storing water. So apparently, according to Colorado law right now, you can hold up to 110 gallons of rainwater on your property. So that's quite a bit. And that's great for your landscaping. You can just, use that water and reduce the amount of water. So, and then conserving energy and reducing CO2 emissions. So all of our equipment is the battery operated, and you can just recharge it. And it's obviously not, my crew, they're grateful that they don't have to deal with the fumes and stuff. And LPEA does have a rebate program. I don't know if you guys know about that, but we've gotten money back just by buying those battery operated equipment. So, yep. And then also just, you know, in terms of your home, like thinking about how you landscape and how that can help reduce energy costs for your home. So just planting some deciduous trees on the south side of your home so that in the summertime you get that nice shade from the leaves, and then in the wintertime, you know, the leaves are gone so you get some of that sun. I mean, just things like that, thinking like that in terms of how your landscape can benefit you. And then just, you know, LED lighting and solar lights. Okay, so using native perennial plants. So as a landscape contractor, I am like super passionate about, I love native plants, like crazy about them. And I'm really bummed because sourcing them has been really difficult, especially here in Durango. Yeah, I have a couple sources. I have one guy has a very small little operation that gives me most of my native plants. He doesn't have a ton of variety, but what I'm looking for are native plants that are straight species that have not been pre-treated with neonicotinoids and chemicals. So what you'll find, and a lot of people don't know this, is that nurseries, mainstream nurseries, a lot of those flowers that are coming in, and it'll say on the tag, attracts pollinators, and they've been treated with neonicotinoids. And it's systemic, so it affects the entire plant. And it can affect the pollinators. So it's been a struggle for me. I was up in Boulder a couple weeks ago for something else, and they have an amazing nursery up there, a Harlequin's nursery, and they probably like 80% of their inventory is native, non-treated species. So I brought like a ton of plants back. But anyway, so this is the Rocky Mountain penstemon. I'm sure you guys have seen that. That's one of our natives, Penstemon strictus. And then, do you guys know what that one is? It's Boulder raspberry. And you'll see that up in the hills too. Yeah, it's beautiful. So this is the Harlequins. I just wanted to take a picture of that because I just thought that was so great. They have this sign that says healthy pesticide-free plants. So you're not going to see that in mainstream nurseries, and you're not going to know whether or not they've been treated or not. It's been really hard. So what I recommend, as just, I'm assuming you guys like to garden if you're here. So I would recommend that I encourage you to ask the nurseries to provide more native species, plants that are not treated. That's all you have to do. So hopefully they'll come on board. It's been a little bit of a struggle. So anyway, so I just wanted to include that because that was just really exciting to see that. So we are putting in a pollinator garden, a native pollinator garden. We're working with the Durango Botanic Gardens along the river trail. And so I think, 90% of all the plants in there are natives. I have worked a little bit with the Four Corners Bee Association, and they are, all about honeybees. And so we did put in some catmint in there because I guess the honeybees love catmint. So, but when we're planting natives, it's mainly we're thinking about the native pollinator species. So we want to help support those too. So creating habitat. So in terms of our landscapes, there are some things that you can do just to create habitat for, like for example, native bees. This is a carpenter bee, and it's super tiny, and it nests and lays eggs in the stems of, like pithy stems. So like echinacea or like some kind of sunflower. So when we do our maintenance practice, we leave pretty much most of the seed heads up in the wintertime, but then when we come back in the spring and we cut stuff down, we leave some of those pithy stems like maybe 6-8 inches high. We tell our clients that we leave some of those for nesting bees, because a lot of the native bees, they're not like honeybees where they are living in a colony. They're solitary bees. And so a lot of them will nest either in these stems or they'll nest in the ground kind of thing. So something to consider when you're
Yes.
when you're, yeah.
I mean, just about the native bees, I heard or read somewhere that some of them need bare patches of dirt.
Yes, they need bare patches of dirt too, yeah, because a lot of them nest in the ground. So that's the other thing too, like when you have a planter bed with a lot of mulch, sometimes we see people with like 4 inches of mulch, and it just drives me crazy. We don't need that much mulch. I mean, mulch is great, but you don't need that much mulch. So I encourage folks just to have a little, some bare patches so that bees can nest. So anyway, I just love this image of just different, species and pollinators and birds. And here's the bird in the wintertime with the seed heads, and what we can do with our landscapes to invite wildlife. So, okay, how many species of native bees are there in Colorado? Anybody else? C. Who said C? Yep, 946. Isn't that amazing? Yeah, just in Colorado. And these are just some of the native bees. So that's a tricolored bumblebee up there. That's a mason bee. That's a carpenter bee, and I'm forgetting what that bee is. I just totally forgot.
Pretty.
What?
It's a pretty bee.
Oh, I know. They're so amazing. I love them. But it's just, isn't that amazing? 946. Yeah.
They all have different preferred flowers or whatever they go to.
And that's why the whole idea behind planting natives too is because they've co-evolved with these plants for so long, and some of them do have a very specialistic relationship, with these plants. Like for example, the saguaro cactus, I think it relies only on one bat. And if the bat disappears, the saguaro is going to disappear. I mean, that's how, so for example, a honeybee is more generalistic. A honeybee can get a lot of its food source from a lot of different types of plants, and they don't even have to be native per se. I mean, honeybee is not even native. But for native species in plants, some plants rely on specific pollinators just to propagate. So yeah, it's
another reason why it's so important to have diversity.
Yes, exactly. So another thing is just buying or sourcing products locally, and we do get some of our plants from a local nursery. I don't want to tell you his name because then we won't have as many. But he is here. He just got his license. He just got his nursery license or whatever, and he is growing his business. But it's awesome. So I'm like so excited because he doesn't treat his plant. It's all just native, and some of them are just he collects the seed, locally. So there's that, and then we also, one of the things too is we do our best to. We do whatever we can not to bring organic matter to the landfill. And so we bring pretty much most of our landscaping waste down to him because he also composts, or to another farmer here. So it's great. So anyway, so just thinking about those local systems, and then even mulching. I was thinking about like the arborists who go and cut down, or even the fire mitigation, who are cutting down and mulching trees. I mean, where's that mulch going? Why don't we just use that mulch instead of buying bags of mulch? Mm-hmm. It's just, I mean, why don't we keep it here locally? So, what was that?
And the bags are all in plastic.
Yeah, it's like these bags of yeah, it's crazy. I mean, and there's so many arborists that are going around and they're mulching trees, and there's a ton of mulch.
Yeah, I reached out to I think there's a local lumber mill in Durango, and they basically they were like, we can't even give any of it because it goes to Table Farm. But
oh, it does?
Yeah.
Oh.
They kind of have like the
Yeah.
But if you can just go over to like Mancus Hill or so, up there, and you can get it. It is like probably dominated with pine. which is like it can be antifungal. So
Yeah, there's certain, I know, right, like the pine versus the deciduous, right, and that is something to consider, definitely, in terms of what you want to mulch, and yeah. But, and then also, sometimes I think if the tree was diseased and it was chipped, probably don't want to use that mulch, because that could possibly transfer something. But I'm just trying to think of how, closing the loops, and just,
The city
yeah.
of Durango provides mulch from Christmas trees, but is that suspect because the trees might have been like trees?
I mean, I think you're probably okay. I think for the most part, I think you'll be fine. Yeah, because once the tree is dead and then it's exposed to oxygen, I mean, those kind of processes break down, you know what I mean? It's not, it's more innocuous.
Microorganisms.
Yeah, yeah, and the microorganisms do too. Yep.
City crops up in the spring, they collect, but you don't know what's in that either because it comes from people's yards.
Through composting, though, it does break down. So at Women's Gardens, I heard Michael do a talk, and he was saying that he tested a compost pile that had been composting for a year. And he took it to the lab in Denver, and they tested it, and there was 0. And they knew there were pesticides coming in on the grass clippings, and he didn't believe it, so he tested it again in another pile, same thing. So the microorganisms are breaking down these petrochemicals and all the synthetic stuff, and it's really cool.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, the city of Durango has huge mulch piles up at the cemetery. And they're all from all the different kinds of trees that they, prune or take down and chip. So you can just go up there and get it.
Well, yeah, so I guess this slide is perfect based on our conversation now. So, I mean, how many of you do compost your food waste right now? Oh, that's awesome. Oh my God. That's great. Yeah, so you are one of the 5% of people who actually compost their food waste. It's pretty crazy. And so what happens is, and we actually have, we live in town and our yard is small, so we just use table to farm. But it's great because like we have maybe 1 bag of garbage a week because of that. So, I mean, it's insane what happens when this food waste goes to the landfill though, because it actually is very problematic. And so it doesn't break down, and then it creates methane. And so it just increases our, it increases the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So, yeah, and it would be great if the city of Durango would offer more I don't know, composting services, or just as a landscaping business in terms of our landscape waste. I think a lot of landscape contractors, they just take all their stuff to the dump. It's insane.
yeah, or
Like-
even at the Durango, like the cleanup, it's just like the streets are lined with people.
Oh,
with
yeah.
Sticks and
Yeah,
mulch and
And it just goes to the
weeds.
dump.
and it just goes to the dump.
You put it in a plastic bag and goes to the dump.
I thought it went to the mulch, city mulch pile.
For the cleanup? Oh, I didn't know.
I could be wrong.
I didn't.
That would be great, but I know that in the cleanups though, they also have a lot of non-organic materials, and it seems like they just pick it all up at once. They don't like go and pick up the organic stuff and then come back for the chairs and the,
They do ask that it be kept separate, so I assume.
oh, okay, well that would be great. That would be awesome. Yeah, yeah. Anyway, so I mean, and just reducing waste. So again, whatever you can do, I mean, even reusing grass clippings or your leaf matter, how can you creatively use those to kind of help, mulch your soil, and then also help it, it'll break down, it'll help rebuild the soil. Yeah, and then the other thing is the plastic pots. Oh my gosh. Oh, the plastic pots. So, I mean, that's the thing too. I have not thrown away, or maybe I did throw away a couple plastic pots since I've been doing this business. But for the most part, we give them to the guy who supplies our I just give them all to him. and then, or I just bring them back to Durango Nursery and I just pray that they don't get thrown away. So the plastic pot thing, and there are movements now with that in terms of just the containers that the plants come in, so that they're not this plastic. Anyway, but that's a big issue too. And then also just buying bulk materials instead of bagged. So, okay, and then regenerative lawn care. So we don't do lawn maintenance, like we don't go and mow lawns, and that's not something I'm interested in. But we do fertilize lawns with the compost tea and also organic, if people are interested in that. But there are some things that you can do just to have a more regenerative lawn. And so one of those is just, allowing some clover to grow in there. The clover, again, is a legume. It's in the legume family. It's a nitrogen fixer, and it helps the soil, and it helps the other plants. And then also pollinators love clover. And then just cutting your grass at 3 inches or higher will really help. It'll make the grass more resilient. It'll be healthier. It'll be like a way healthier lawn, because there's a direct correlation between the height of the grass and the length of the roots. So the longer the roots, the healthier the grass is, the less weeds you're going to have. So just keep, cutting your grass, and apparently you can adjust your lawn more. So cutting the grass at 3 inches or higher will really help. And then just, and it'll help in terms of water usage and all of that. So regenerative landscapes, I think, are intrinsically beautiful. And I love this idea of we can still kind of manage our landscapes, and that's great. We can manage our landscapes, we can be involved in our landscapes, and we can create something that's dynamic, and that we can be a little bit hands-off and let things, grow, and let things self-propagate, and let nature come up a little bit and surprise us instead of trying to control everything, right? And like having only one plant here, and so I just think that they're more dynamic, they're more beautiful. And then I love this one here because it just shows that we can still mow our lawns, but we can also have just beautiful, wild, like almost like a meadow-like effect here in terms of just letting the lawn grow high and allowing flowers to come up. So yes, we are creating problems, but we can also create solutions. And so, and I think that these principles, and just as a landscape contractor, it's hard. We're learning all the time too, and we've made mistakes, but we're just trying to do the best that we can too, so that we can feel good at the end of the day. So we can, help people create beautiful landscapes and beautiful gardens, but then know that we're not harming the planet. We're not harming the microorganisms. Like, I'm not harming my crew by having them spray a bunch of pesticide. We just feel better at the end of the day. And I'm just going to end with this quote. So the care of the earth is our most ancient and most worthy, and after all, our most pleasing responsibility. To cherish what remains of it and to foster its renewal is our only legitimate hope. You guys know Wendell Berry? Yes. Yeah, he's amazing. So that's it. Thanks so much. Appreciate you guys coming. Yeah, any questions?
I have a question about, you said when plants are treated, does that mean that they're throughout their life, even when they grow, the new branches and the new flowers and everything else is also poisoned, or?
Pretty much. So those chemicals are systemic in that if they treat a seed, what happens is that stays in there and it grows up through the stem, and then that chemical stays in the stem. It goes out into the pollen, it goes into the roots. And I've heard different statistics, but I was astonished. And one of them was that those pesticides can stay in there for like 3 years. It's insane how long. So it's, and so just a lot of people don't understand that when they're buying plants in a nursery that they're, and they're not all like that. I mean, it's kind of mixed because I did have one of my crew members, he was a student at Fort Lewis, and so he chose to do his senior project to just research whether or not, you know, nurseries are doing this, how many are doing it, and like where are they getting their plants. And so he did a whole research project, and he also kind of researched Durango Nursery, and so it was kind of half and half. But a lot of their suppliers, they do treat them. And then they say that they attract pollinators and they're good for pollinators, so. Yeah, well, yeah, so John, who owned it, he retired, although he's still actually producing some plants, but he's trying to sell that too. So he has a pretty big operation. So the lease, that was owned by the Ute, that land, and his lease was coming up, but I know that he was like he was ready to go. Yeah, he did. Yeah. Yes, so again, if you can, you know, just get on the phone, or when you go to the nurseries, just say, can you guys supply more straight native species that aren't treated? That would be great.
Benefit to them to
well, a lot more people are asking, you mean in terms of just selling them?
the Durango nursery, is it less expensive for them, like as a restaurant owner, it's less expensive, I know, not that I do this, but other restaurants to go through Cisco or the other industrial food suppliers. And so, you know, it's more expensive to do what I do. So that's why more restaurants don't do what I do. But is it less expensive for them, do you think, from like Durango Nursery or whatever, to find and harvest and look for plants that are not treated, that are native? And what's the
That's a good question, and I couldn't really tell you the answer to that. The owner of Harlequin in Boulder, I had a great conversation with him, and his plants, like, so a 1 gallon perennial native is $7. Well, I mean, it's $8 for retail, but he gives contractors a discount, so it's $8. Do you know how much a 1 gallon container is at the nurseries, the mainstream nurseries? They're like $14.95. That's, yes. They're $14.95 or up. I mean, some of them are $16.95 or like $20 for a 1 gallon perennial. So that's what I'm saying. So those are the ones in the mainstream. Those are like coming from California, and they're probably being treated. So Harlequin, he basically starts. Most of them are cultivated on site at the nursery, and so I think it probably is cheaper. It takes longer because there's just, you know, that period where they have to constantly nurse the plants up to the point where they can sell them. But that's his operation. And so, and some of the nurseries, they do cultivate and they do actually propagate plants, but most of them don't. Most of them are, and yes, they're getting them from like other states.
So it sounds like an ease thing, like it's easier to import.
It's, well, yeah, it's probably, yeah, it's easier. I mean, I don't know if it's, I mean, it takes longer to do it, but yeah, I don't know. That's a great, maybe I'll look into that. It'll be my next, like, little, yeah, exactly.
It's consumer education too, like, it's a lot of pieces.
But, you know, this guy that we get the native plants from here in Durango, I mean, he has a couple greenhouses, and he's got an irrigation system set up, and I think he just walks away and then he just plants it in. I mean, I don't think there's that much to it. He has really amazing soil, and then he just lets them do their thing. So
probably because the bigger ones don't have that soil health, so you have to treat the plant in order for it to be.
yeah, and then it's dependent on synthetics, and yeah, and there's just, yeah. Yep.
What we're doing with our food stuff.
Yes. Yep.
Do you get anything from High Plains Nursery?
Oh yeah, High Plains is They're by Pagosa, right? Or no, where are they?
They're
Forgot.
between Ignacio and Pagosa.
Yeah. So I tried to reach out to them this year and they never called back. So I just figured, and I tried multiple times and nobody answered. And so I just figured they were out of business. But I'm glad that you brought that up because I forgot about them.
Yeah, I bought some plants, all natives from them.
Oh, great.
They're going through like transitions with their owner. The father was ill.
Yeah.
The son's taken over. So yeah, they've had some bumps in the road. Well, they mostly have B&B, big trees.
Okay.
But they also have 5 and 7 gallons. And then last year I bought a bunch of 1 gallon perennials from them. That were all natives.
That is great. Okay, I'm glad that you mentioned them.
Have them, but if
Yeah.
you have like a certain minimum order, you can order that.
Yeah. Okay.
I
Okay.
don't know about the spraying.
Right.
They don't
Right.
do much more than the basic maintenance, but they're
Yeah.
especially hardy.
That's a great. And then also there's Cliff Rose, which is kind of by Cortez, and they do have some natives as well. Just not a huge variety, but they do have some natives. So.
I was also going to ask you about compost tea and
Oh.
spraying it and stuff.
Yeah.
So maybe you could explain a little bit more about how you do that. And I've made compost tea a couple times and just watered it with a watering can, but I've never sprayed a big area or anything.
I mean, it just depends on how much you produce. I mean, we honestly, we don't have like a big operation in terms of producing compost tea like some people do. But we can always, like, we'll get it started on a Monday morning and we'll let it brew for like 24 to 36 hours. And then we have to use it that day for it to, maintain the amount of probiotics and stuff that are in there. Yeah. So then we apply it that day. We transfer it to the containers. And so, I mean, it's just something, it requires aeration. We put compost, we put also worm castings in there. We put a little bit of molasses just to give the organism some food, and just let it go and let it do its thing. And it's like, I guess maybe like brewing beer too. I don't know. I'm not, I've never done that, but.
Do the aerating?
The aerating is very important, yes. Yeah. So you have a pump going.
And then when you spray it, then it's just a really small amount that's getting.
It really is, yeah.
It's like taking probiotics. It's great for our guts. It just gets them started and do things,
So you can just spray it on the surface and those little organisms go to town, huh?
It's.
What do you use to filter it? How finely do you filter it to spray?
We don't need to. I mean, it's a liquid, so we just put it in the thing, and then we just use the sprayer. It's just a liquid, and so the probiotics and all of that, and the bacteria are so tiny. It's.
So, but you put compost in to make it. Right?
Well, we have compost in a bag. It's like in a
Like a mesh.
Yes, thank you. a mesh bag. Yes. So we don't actually pour the compost into so we put the worm castings in the, and then we have it just suspended in there. And so
Can you just use like straight manure?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Might be too hot.
Yeah. That might have too much nitrogen in it. That might be too potent.
Well, solid manures are different too.
Yep.
Maybe if you did it straight in the water.
And there are some manures, I have horses, and you have to be careful where the hay came from, because if they have treated the hay crop, it goes through the animal.
Oh,
and it
yeah.
affects your garden.
Yeah. I know. See, everything's connected.
Not just seeds, but
Yeah.
it can kill your garden, what you're trying to garden, because it has herbicides that go through the animal.
Is that even after it's composted, do you know?
That probably would help a lot. But I know horses, if they're monogastric, right?
Yeah, their poop is not at all like a cow. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, unless it's chopped and composted, it's not really very beneficial.
yeah.
And it doesn't ever break down, it just stays like,
Yeah.
it stays there.
And,
Yeah.
my brother uses whey, the leftover whey,
Oh,
and sprays it on our pastures to
Nice.
to feed them microorganisms.
oh, that's awesome. Wow. Oh, that's really cool. Like a powder form or?
No,
Oh,
it's the whey left over from his cheese making process, which
Oh,
is liquids.
yeah.
Leftover, that comes out from the cheese making, so it's liquid, and he
Wow.
just puts it in this big white barrel and goes out on the four-wheeler, and he just lets it spray all over the
wow.
ground.
That is so cool.
Another way to feed
Yeah,
little guys down there.
yeah.
Dan, did you have a question?
Yeah, I'm an atmospheric scientist. We
Oh,
talk about
okay.
timescales a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
And the thing I'm really trying to understand about this regenerative stuff is what are the timescales involved? I imagine you've had clients that you've convinced to change and you've worked with them for years, and what kind of timescales are involved in a conversion?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we're not really it would be great if we could, like in terms of doing data, collecting data and stuff. Yeah, I mean, Mandy might be able to speak to that, or Cynthia, right? Cynthia,
Yeah,
because
Cynthia's
it's a really great question. And have you guys seen that documentary, Kiss the Ground? You should watch that because it really helps explain just how that organic matter, in terms of the timeline and how it increases. But yeah, in there are some farmers who were doing, industrial practices, and then they completely switched to regenerative. They increased their profits by like 1,000-fold or something. I mean, it's insane. I mean, it's absolutely, it's to me ludicrous that any farmer wouldn't switch because of just
the productivity of the land.
Yes, just the productivity. I mean, it's insane. Like I can't even comprehend it or explain it. But yeah, just by switching to regenerative, the scale is it's very different in terms of.
Well, and as far as the time scale, like a lot of reasons why industrial farmers struggle to switch is because there is like a dip in productivity while the land heals and everything kind of like figures stuff out again. So it can be like a 3-year time span, but then it just goes like J-curve. And so that's the gap, is like, working on helping industrial farmers to switch. It's like they have to make it through that chunk of time,
Yeah.
and that's financial, and that's just, it's hard. So
3 years back to healthy land seemed like a reasonable estimate of timescale.
yeah, well, and even in the documentary too. Huh?
It can be quicker than that.
It can be quicker than that.
Lasagna, if your lasagna is like taking cardboard and putting it down on the ground and then mulching over that. I mean, we've done that with our property, and it's within a year. Like, if you have like the cardboard's gone and the soil is dark and healthy and has lots of worms in it. We have a farmer from Tierra Vida that took on a piece of land that was really heavy in clay. And the FIT, which is the Farmers in Training at Fort Lewis College,
Michelle.
was telling everybody, yeah, it's like this 3-year process. And then the farmer was a guest speaker, and she's like, well, it took us like maybe 6 months at the most, because they used chicken composting. And they moved the chickens in their greenhouses, and they used the lasagna layering, and they did it like in the clay, which was, if you've ever seen clay soil, it's like thick, and everybody's like, it's impossible to plant. And it was dark, beautiful soil, and they grew the best. Like every vegetable that came out of their garden was like super vegetable, like beautiful, because they have the most amazing healthy soil, like what she's talking about. The productivity just goes up, and you have incredible, healthy, dense microorganism soil, and nutrient dense, which is what we want to eat.
Yeah, I was just astounded at the profits and how much the profits go up. Yeah, it's unbelievable.
It's scale. I think it all is scale.
Yeah, well, that's kind of where my mind's going.
Yeah.
And then also, I mean, like these regenerative farmers, the ones who switched, then they weren't using any inputs. So they weren't relying on, and they didn't need the subsidies, you know. I mean, it is amazing, and it's like less work. I mean, obviously the rotation, there's more rotation of the animals, but there's really less work because you're letting nature do its thing, and yeah.
Animal impact, that's one of the biggest jumps you can have. Like I think in the documentary To Which We Belong, which James Ranch was featured in as well, there was a part where they were talking about in Africa where they moved the bomas, which are those circular kind of fencing things, and it was like within a year it went from 20% ground cover to 75% or something insane. So it happens really fast.
Nature's ready when you give her tools.
Yep.
Absolutely.
I think in under a decade we could, I want to say it's 2/3 of our world's grasslands are desertifying right now, and if we regenerate just half of those, we would go back to pre-industrial levels of carbon in the atmosphere, and that's like in a decade. It's mind-blowing, you know.
Creating a more active carbon sink would be really, really crucial right now.
Yeah.
Whenever year, we're using more than we can regenerate.
Right.
And it's getting worse.
Yep.
That's why we have to support our local farmers. Buy from local.
Yep.
That's the way to do it, because they are caring for the soil. You know, working with regenerative landscaping. I mean, just all those little tiny things we have control over. That makes a big difference.
So we have the ability to destroy the whole planet. We also have the ability to regenerate the whole planet. Like it's just a shift, you know. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. Yeah, the solstice.